Welcome back, friends. I'm still, my heart's still beating a little bit here from my blood pressure reading. But as we know, February is Black History Month, and we have a very amazing story to share with you. I'm very excited to be joined by Mayor Hughes and Janie Cooper-Wilson, who are here to represent the Oro African Church, and an amazing story. This is a big date for us today. Maybe you can touch on that, Mr. Hughes. A year ago today, we were in a different situation than we are today.
We certainly were. We were coming on this show to sort of plead for money to help restore the African Church. We had discovered that there were two major cables that was put across the church to keep it from falling down, and the top logs had rotted out, so that one cable had pulled right through and the other one was partially, and had the snow load gotten on the roof, the church would have collapsed. And so we made an appeal, and boy, we had great success. Really? So, and Janie, you actually were a descendant of the people that actually put these bricks together. Yes, so talk to me about the meaning of the church and what you were feeling at that time when you knew it was in such a rough state.
It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking, and I appealed to local descendants, and I spoke with at length with Mayor Hughes. The importance of this church is people are only skimming the surface at this point. They have no idea the extent. It touches on every community, Black community in the province of Ontario. It speaks to the actual history of Canada, the true history of Canada, right. Not what you find in the history books, but the true history of Canada. And as far as I'm concerned, it is the greatest treasure that this province has seen in a century.
So that's what is so important, to make sure that we came together as a community and what happened actually? You can share your story, because a year ago we were in this rough state. A year later, amazing news. Well,
just to underscore what Janie has said, the importance of the church, it isn't just a local one, because when we started a crowd-raising fund campaign, we raised over $200,000, and that was donations coming right across Canada from both Blacks and different people of different ethnic background, and in the United States as well. Collected not only money, but collected a treasure of history and interconnecting as well. The other fact is that this story has reached such a distinction that the Canadian government is celebrating the 20th anniversary officially of Black history, and well, lo and behold, there's a picture of our church with the Nina McQuire that we had on here a while ago, featured as on their poster, and we're officially invited as being one of their partners. So awesome. Things have really come a long way, and we've had some amazing construction work happen on the church as well.
Now, you mentioned the poster and the significance of the choir. It was quite emotional for you.
Oh, yes.
Maybe you can touch on that.
Well, these children, most of them are orphans, and very few speak English. And when I explained to their pastor the significance that the people that built the church were actually slaves or descendants of slaves, and they got it in their head, wow, these are people that were taken from Mother Africa, brought to the United States, and now they found freedom. It came full circle. A lot of tears that day.
I bet.
A lot of tears.
Now, today we've got, we're building a new foundation. So basically what we did is we lifted up the church, yeah, which was very emotional for you as well, you were mentioning. We moved it over, took out the old foundation, put down a new foundation. Now we're in the process of rebuilding this so we can honor the heritage and the history of this church. So it must be, seeing this come full circle for you must be very emotional as well.
To know that it'll be there for future generations, not just African Canadians, but all cultures. It is a tool that can be used that's going to bring about a lot of social change. I can see that.
Can you? So you're excited?
As long as we keep this man in council.
Exactly. Now, you mentioned a little earlier the true history. I feel like we don't celebrate our history as much as our friends down south. Especially this time of year, maybe we don't celebrate the Canadian Black people that have shaped our country. Maybe there's some people you can give recognition to that we might not be familiar with.
There are so many, right? There's so many. I wouldn't want to offend,
I see,
one or the other, but it's true, and it goes hand in hand with the fact that the reason a lot of the African Canadian history hasn't been brought forward, it's to cover up the propaganda of generations ago. it was strictly Anglo. It was British, and anything that had to do with America, had to do with slavery, was shoved under the table. So it's hard for some to acknowledge today that these things actually happened, and that communities like Oro and the community that was built up around that little church had something to do with that. You know, it's pretty hard to take. But
Absolutely.
I do see a big change when I'm out lecturing.
Do you?
I see a whole new audience coming forward. I see people more willing to ask questions. And they feel that I'm the type of person that's approachable. I said to one of your colleagues today, she was mentioning it's very hard in your field to know how to approach different cultures at times. And I said, use respect, you can't go wrong.
That's
You
mutual
can't
across the board. It doesn't matter where.
That's right.
Respect is it's mutual no matter who and what you're
That's
talking
right.
about. You got to have it, right? Now, what kind of ETA are we looking at? When are we hoping to reopen the doors?
Well, we're hoping to have the restoration of the church done. We're targeting for the end of March, hopefully with the work inside, but then there's a lot of other stuff outside to go as well, and we were looking for a date in the summer to have a official grand celebration, a reopening, because people that contribute right across Canada want to come to it, and certainly some of the people we met in Ottawa are anxious to come as well. And so we're targeting right now, we have an official, but it seems like the weekend of August 19th to the 21st, somewhere in that period there is when we're targeting for that.
It must have been so amazing to see the support, not only from our community, because it seems when something goes down in our community, it bands together and we make it happen, but this was countrywide. You got support right from coast to coast.
Absolutely, yeah, and we not only got support from right across the country, but the number of local people in the community that once again remembered their roots and came back out. And when you talk to them about the blacks being within the community, everyone speaks so fondly of it. It's incredible, and have some great stories to share.
And you mentioned story, and that was one thing when we were talking about earlier that really hit me is, if the church wasn't here, we would lose that story.
Absolutely. I think people way back recognized that church was so important, not just because it was a building, but what it stood for. And if the church disappeared, probably so would everything else that goes with it. So it's so important to keep that church, and if you don't keep it there, like the past generations did, the same risk is there.